And her partner was a sheep farmer with an IQ in the 70s. I mean, this wasn't a brilliant guy, reflecting back, very heartful guy, but he was just repeating back her exact words. She's a therapist. She's had 3,000 hours, supervised hours, of all this therapy, and she's in tears. She's never felt heard before in her life, you know, the way this sheep farmer heard her. So we have a huge hearing deficit, and to have our partners truly and deeply hear us. I also can tell with Christine when I'm not hearing her. And sometimes I'll ask myself and say, I'm not listening, say it again. Other times she'll say something very, very, very sweet. I mean, she never, takes digs at me, but she'll say something, are you sure you got that, darling? Or something, oh! What was it? So you really monitor the quality of your own listening and tune down. Like Christine and I also have different paces. I live life basically at 110 miles an hour. I have basically 2 speeds, stop at 110 miles an hour, and not many gears in between. Whereas she's a super mellow person, she speaks slower than I do, and it's wonderful for me to tune in to her. Because I find when I do, I slow down, I relax. The gifts of tuning into another human being who's different from you are so powerful, because they get you out of your own automatic processes and into that gift of presence. We just bring people present to each other. As families, as couples, it is such a powerful thing to do.
Okay, so there's really a sense of presence in the second part. In the look part, you get yourself present to the surroundings, to your partner, and then you continue that presence into the third, into the listening phase,
right,
where you're very present as you listen.
Yes.
Okay, so that's your 3 phases. Now our 3 phases are similar in many ways and different in some ways. We also stop, and then we, rather than focus as much on the mental part, the mindfulness part, which we're very much in favor of, what we do is we do the energy exercises that bring the person into presence. Yeah. And so Donna's demonstrated 3 of them. You demonstrated the tapping of 4 points.
Yes.
You demonstrated what's called the Wayne Cook posture, and you demonstrated the hookup. And you talked about how different ones, we generally teach about 8 of them, and you talked about how different ones of those are particularly useful for different types. So as a kinesthetic, the Wayne Cook is particularly good for you.
Yes. What I would like to do is back up just a little bit and say, as somebody like me, if I'm really, really stressed out, I won't be able to keep eye contact. I can't look. It's like, if I look at you, I'm going to remember precisely who you are, you know, but not me. So I can look down. So sometimes people have to look in different directions and so this phase of looking would be more in our 3rd step, wouldn't it? In our 3rd step, we can look at each other, but David can look at me, but I can't look.
It's funny, I have the same problem. When I'm stressed, I can't look at my partner. It's overwhelming.
It's overwhelming.
It's overwhelming. I can look somewhere else in the room, but I can't.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
There was a wonderful author and therapist many years ago. I can't remember his name, but he wrote a book on shame. And he talked about, as a psychiatrist, he would, people had to divert their eyes and go in a different place. And he'd have them look outside the window, just look in a different direction. So I think looking is really important. And I think that there are directions that people have to look often that is different than looking at their partner. So maybe it's the way that I am, that we put that into our 3rd stage.
Yeah, exactly, because our 3rd stage is like your 2nd stage.
Yes, yes.
So what we're doing is we're inserting the energy medicine techniques in between that presence. You know, because the 3rd stage is to attune to your partner.
Right.
And so we also, however, use different energy medicine techniques to really build that connection that's been broken. So So do you want to describe one of those?
Well, let's see, one of the things that I really like is we have say that we're still disconnected from each other.
Right.
And we can't find one another. And also, I'm still in this place of maybe needing to look straight down, okay? And so we have something that, David has a wonderful tool first of notice breath, soften belly, open heart. And so when you notice your breath, it takes it right out of his head, because he goes in his head. I don't go to my head. So he drops out of his head by noticing his breath and softening his belly.
So lead everybody through that.
Okay? So, we would do this standing up. Should I stand up or just sit here?
I'm not sure that the
Okay, let me
shot
just
is
be
captured,
right here.
so.
I mean, whatever is going on, if you just stop, just notice your breath. I mean, it makes you go out of your head completely into your belly. And then notice breath, soften your belly all the way. And then open your heart. And how we do it is we're facing one another, and we're both looking down as we both notice breath, and we both soften our belly together, and then we rise our eyes up to the heart. Now, we both have our hands over the heart chakra at this time, and for me to say that I haven't busted through, to think he's an okay guy after all, but I see him with his hands on his heart, it melts me. It melts me, and I suddenly see him as a little boy, innocent, with his heart open, and so then we go open heart. And it's like I want to walk into his arms. It's really nice.
Beautiful.
And I can look at him then.
Yeah, I use a technique from one of our energy psychology colleagues. He calls it heart assisted therapy, or HAT. And simply crossing your hands over your heart
Yes.
and breathing through your heart. You also tap with those fingertips on your heart and alternate tapping on your heart as well. But there's a little bit of research now showing that just doing this actually regulates your autonomic nervous system.
I know it does, and we've said that to many people. You know, if you just do this, if you can't do anything else, just do this. I'll tell you another one that we love. Okay, is in every culture all over the world, children make a heart like this, just a heart like that. And if you do it over yourself, it starts to move energy because it governs something called the bridge flow in another ancient system called the radiant circuits, and then wind up with your hands here. It feels really good.
And all of these, again, are ways of bringing you back into your body.
Yes.
So you aren't off in your head,
Yes.
aren't off your conditioned responses, you're actually in your body, and you're present with your partner, you slow
Yes.
yourself down, you have a chance of reconnecting. And one of the things that I'm looking at now is what happens to people's oxytocin long term. Oxytocin, for example, governs all kinds of bonding, but it's also the main reason why men need Viagra and Cialis and other erection aids when they get older, is the drop in oxytocin, because oxytocin is what drives the male erection. People don't realize that. It took me a lot of sleuthing to find that fact in some obscure scientific papers. So bonding, oxytocin, produces incredible closeness for both men and women. And what happens is when you use these energy exercises to actually induce closeness, when you do things like listen to your partner, have really deep, heartfelt conversations, and generate emotional intimacy, then you start to have a history of closeness and connection that bonds you to your partner, and you literally start to associate them with pleasure. So now, rather than your relationship being a source of pain and confusion and disappointment after 2 years or 3 years, people have to settle into those really burned out patterns. Now suddenly your partner is your primary source of pleasure and connection. And so you now start to actually have a big oxytocin response to your partner, especially if you're using novelty. If you can do a few new things every few weeks. So just drive a different route back from work, or drive a different route with your person. Go out to a bed and breakfast, try a different activity, just try something you haven't tried before. Go to the theater, go to the opera, go to the ballet, do something that breaks your routine. That convinces the brain that this new person, that this old person is a new person. So doing a new thing with the old person tricks that brain into thinking that your spouse is a new person. One of the things about rats,
I love that.
rats, I'll tell you, rat sex right now. If when you put a female rat in a cage with a male rat, the male rat copulates with the female rat. No big surprise. If you put a second female in there, again, this oxytocin cycle, the male will copulate with the new female and ignore the old female totally. If you put a third female in there, the male rat will copulate with the third female and ignore the previous two females, ad infinitum, until the male rat collapses of exhaustion. And the reason is that our brains are wild for novelty. Speaking slowly is novelty, so your brain slows down and pays attention. Driving a new route makes the brain pay attention. Going on a new place for a date makes the brain pay attention. Doing anything novel, playing a new card game, trying to learn a new language, anything you do it with your spouse, and now you're tricking your brain into thinking that the old person is the new person. So you start to then build oxytocin with your spouse to where you're having a fantastic, wonderful, luscious life after 10, 20, 30 years. We were with John Gray and Bonnie Gray, spent a bunch of time with them this year at an event, and had these deep conversations with them. And watching, they've been together 30 years. John Gray is the author of Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, and Bonnie is his wife for 30 years. And watching these people, after 30 years, his listening to her, she's respecting him. They're walking on the beach hand in hand after 30 years. How do you do that after 30 years? And what it looks like is happening is that they're obviously not in that oxytocin cycle of boom and bust. They've got the skills, got the tools, done the practices to bring themselves close together, and they can act like newlyweds even after decades. That's the possibility of learning these few little hacks to shift and turn that Mother Nature's predisposition into something that actually works to support your relationship long term, rather than tear you apart.
Yeah, I love that. I have to say that David and I were completely incompatible when we first and nobody really gave us a chance of making it because we were on the surface so incompatible. We both felt we had a soul bond, but we couldn't reach it very easily. And these are the tools and techniques that really, those incompatible ways became very compatible, and they're the very reason that we got richer. It's like, it's really good.
And challenging yourself that way.
Yes. Yeah.
Helps you grow.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you have the tools, you can overcome those kinds of superficial incompatibilities and have a long relationship.
Well, this goes back to the stop, look, and listen, and ours that we call the STAR pact, which is stop, tap, and do other energy methods, attune, and then you return to the issue that had stumped you. You return to the issue that had thrown you off to resolve it. And what's important there, both techniques, is that you are going into territory that's difficult, territory that gives the newness. Because what happens for couples often is they just take issues and just kind of stuff them away.
Right.
And that makes your lives more and more narrow.
Right.
If you know that you can address the difficult issues and you have a tool so that when you do start to go off the cliff, you don't follow your instincts. I mean, so much of psychology is teaching people to follow their instincts, but not at these times. Don't follow your instincts, follow your path, follow the plan, follow what is going to get you present again, what is going to get you centered, so that you can tackle the really tough issues that made us incompatible, so that we could begin to engage them in new ways. And often you can resolve them, sometimes you can't. Sometimes there are what John Gottman calls irresolvable issues in all relationships, but you're able to reach a point where you understand that, where you have respect for your partner's position, you know that they have respect for you, so that irresolvable issue is it's resolved in the sense that it's not energetically throwing you off. So that's where both of our methods are bringing us. And I know that in your approach, Nelson, you are using a lot of EFT, I imagine at each of these stages, but there's also in your course that you're going to be teaching on really deepening the connection between two people. You also look at the patterns that are inherited or are developed in early childhood and the different ways that people attach to one another, and those are very difficult for psychologists to change. Most of history, people hooked up with somebody that whatever their attachment style was, that's what they had to adapt to. That didn't change. But now you're helping people to really change those. So maybe tell us a little bit about how you do that.
Yeah, in the course, one of the first things we do is have people identify their attachment style and the attachment style of their partner, or if they're single, the kinds of partners they usually attract. And there are several attachment styles. The three main ones we look at are either secure attachment, or avoidant attachment, or ambivalent attachment. And secure attachment comes from being a baby who is loved, stroked, held, had its needs basically taken care of. Then avoidant attachment is a pattern that you may have picked up from a caregiver who was not really there for you. So this person was the only way you would have survived in the world, but they may have been neglectful, or even harmful, or abusive. And then ambivalent attachment is somewhere between the two. It's push and pull, come and go. And so recognizing which of those three attachment styles you are and which one your partner is important. Now, David, I bet you would say the same thing, that 20 years ago, I would have argued your attachment style was a bedrock function of your personality and couldn't be changed. Because I knew that. I knew you formed these kinds of styles early in life, from birth through the age of 2. From birth through the age of 2, the fastest growing region of our brain is our limbic system, our emotional brain. We're learning how to relate to other people. It's the most crucial thing to survival. If you're a baby that can convince other people to love you and to nurture you, you'll live. If you don't, you die, back in evolutionary times. So there's this incredibly important developmental stage, 0 to 2, when you're forming your attachment style. And we would have argued years ago that there's no way you can change that. Now, in energy psychology and energy medicine, we're seeing people literally change parts of their psyche we used to think, I certainly used to think, were completely beyond the level of personal growth. You just couldn't go there, couldn't change those. And we're seeing people radically shift the way they do relationships. So we try and train them in simple concepts like attachment style early on, so if they know, it's not because I'm a bad person, it's because my parenting was deficient in that way, and that's why I had this push, pull, come, go. I want you, I hate you, I want to be with you, I can't stand you. There are all these dynamics going on, and honor those, and we just teach love and acceptance. Love yourself the way you are. You aren't going to learn to love yourself when you're perfect. None of us are going to be perfect. Just love yourself as you are. You're the person you have right now. Love yourself just the way you are, whatever your attachment style. And then Carl Rogers, the great client psychotherapist, said that the paradox of change is that the first step in change is accepting ourselves the way we are. Paradox. I mean, you want to be different, and yet you first have to just love yourself. In EFT, the setup statement is, even though I have this problem, tap on this point while saying that, I deeply and completely accept myself just the way I am. Not when I'm better, not when I'm perfect, but now. So attachment styles are crucial to understanding how we do relationships.
Yes, and that to have a way to change something that for most of history people couldn't change in their partner or in themselves is a remarkable breakthrough. I mean, people learn how to self-soothe that never learned it when they were little and never believed that there was a way that they could do it. They look to a partner to take care of them in ways that a partner can't possibly. So you teach people that, and in your, I know this, you've been teaching this now for years, for several years, that and so this isn't your first portion of this. Can you tell us of some of your success stories?
I can, and in terms of history, one of the first, I was first learning EFT many years ago, maybe 12 years ago, and I did a book signing for my book Soul Medicine at a bookstore in the Midwest, and there was a crowd of maybe 40, 50 people there for the book signing, and just learned a little bit about EFT. So I invited this guy up who wanted to work with me, sit in front, we were on these high stools in front of this crowd, and I said, what's your big problem? What are you going to have to work on? He said, well, my problem is this. My wife and I have been in couples therapy for 4 years, once a week. And we've been married 28 years. And I've realized it's just not working. 4 years of individual therapy, couples therapy once a week. I know it's over. It's really clear to me it's over. And now I have to tell her. And I feel really bad that I have to tell her. But I made up my mind. I know this is just, we're coming apart. And now my next life challenge is I have to sit down with my wife and tell her. And I don't know how to talk about this with her. So I had him do some tapping. What I had him do was tune into his body and sense where in his body he felt that physical feeling. I always go back to the body. And he said, well, I feel this feeling in my chest when I think about telling my wife. I said, when's the earliest memory you have of feeling that same physical feeling in your chest? And he said, when I was 5 years old, I remember my family was driving somewhere in the family car, and my brother and I were in the back seat of the car, and we were fighting with each other. My mom and dad were in the front. My mom and dad were getting annoyed. My dad said, cut it out. So we cut it out for about 2 minutes, being a 5-year-old boy and older brother, and then we were fighting again. And so my dad reached around the back of the front seat, and just clobbered me hard. And that was his memory. We tapped on the memory. We tapped on one memory, a couple of other things, and then that was the end of the EFT session. So I said to the guy, so now, tell me more about your wife. And the whole audience was sitting there watching us. And the man said, well, I'm realizing my wife's a really wonderful person, but I've been 28 years invested in this relationship. And now's the time to really commit to it and focus on making success of it. And my jaw just clanged on the floor with amazement, so did everyone else in the audience. We were all like, but you come up here to work on telling her it was definitely over, you had no doubt about that whatsoever. And I watched people go through radical transformations like this, and they astonished me. I could not have predicted or believed that. So now I've seen this happen over and over and over again, where people who are repeating really bad relationship patterns over and over again break out of them, where couples who have been stagnant and stuck in conditioned reflexive patterns for decades together, they have bitter, stale marriages, and they're just shifting them. I work with one couple on videotape, and again, in our online course, we have a video for every week. And some of them, and I'm getting goosebumps just saying this now, because some of these people are disclosing deeply private things publicly to help other people heal. But the one couple I work with, they were sitting there on video, and he had a porn addiction and impotence. He could get excited about watching porn, but not with his wife. And so, I mean, that's, up after many years of marriage, they had 3 kids. And she, when I talked to her, I characterized her as a boiling volcano of rage. This woman had so much rage inside of her. And we worked on these patterns of theirs intensity on video for about an hour. And we ran a retreat for a bunch of single people and couples at the time. And that night, Christine came back from the hot tub. She didn't make the hot tub. She said they were in the hot tub. And they were making out like they were teenagers again. They're falling into each other's arms. Then the last day of the retreat, they gave us a recap of the previous few days. They said, we had a couple of bumps in the road, but we're like newlyweds again. We just can't believe how much love and passion we have. His impetus has gone away. Her anger's gone away. They're tapping through their issues, and the marriages are shifting. Now, it doesn't always mean that every marriage should be fair. Some people use it for constant coupling, coming out of relationships, but they're healthier. The main thing is what's healthy for them and what will really help them navigate their issues. So those are 2 of the stories that have just amazed me
Those are amazing stories.
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about the course as we kind of wrap up our
Yeah.
time here?
I am wildly excited about this. And as far as history goes, I looked back the other day as I was preparing to talk to you.
Yeah.
Need some water, Donna?
Get some
Yes.
water?
Okay. We'll be spread away. Actually, I have some over here in a cup. There you go.
Oh, thank you. Right.
So in terms of history, in terms of time frame, I looked back and realized that some of the material in this course I was collecting in like 1983. I've been collecting material for this course for 30 years. I didn't even know I was collecting it for a course. But I was collecting all the best, highest leverage techniques I was able to find, from Gestalt therapy, from couples therapy, from a whole variety of different disciplines. And so people learn 12 different skills in this course. And again, these are the things I think are really important. Like in week 3, we're coming right out with the dark side. We're saying, you've got to admit you've got a dark side, and if you don't learn to deal with and integrate your dark side, it's going to come out there and hurt your relationship, maybe sabotage your relationship, maybe sabotage 3 marriages in a row, because it's a part of you that needs attention. So we have a whole module on dealing with the dark side. We have another whole module on the whole concept of what do you do when you are in personal growth and spiritual transformation, and your partner does not give a flip. Because a lot of couples are like that. The one person, usually the woman, is really in personal growth, and the guy just wants to veg up in front of the TV with his beer. We had one lady who took the course and had an amazing physical recovery from a fairly severe, actually very severe, degenerative disease. But as she recovered physically, and then we had to do this with her husband, she wrote me this long letter saying, my husband used to just come home, he's a Vietnam veteran with PTSD, he used to come home, he used to drink himself into a stupor, he used to watch TV, he was just out of it. And now, she said, it's like I have my husband back again. He doesn't drink, he sits there and talks to me at the end of the day, rather than vegging in front of the TV. He's with me, this couple has presence after many, many years together. So I collected all of these best practices from many different places, mostly energy psychology, but other disciplines as well, like Gestalt therapy, for example. And so I bring them all together in this one 12-week online course that people take. So you start the course, you learn a couple of skills. You learn EFT, you learn to relax your tongue, you learn to work your dark side. And one of the modules, we have people get your book, Energies of Love. Off the modules, they learn those skills. So we have further and deeper, richer learning after each week. But each week is designed to teach you one essential skill that, if you're single, will mean you don't repeat the mistakes of the past in your next relationship or your current relationship. If you're married or in a relationship, if you're in a new relationship, how do you make love last? How do you stretch out the honeymoon period for, say, 50 years? You know, there's a cool study published just 2 weeks ago showing that couples who have happy marriages after 50 years have more sex than they had after 30 years. Their sexual frequency is increasing after 50 years. Those couples were successful. And who would have thought? I mean, geriatric studies, you know, who would have thought that geriatrics would be a source of titillation? But it's true. So how do you stretch the honeymoon period out for a long time? Also, if you are in one of those marriages, which so many of the people we know are, where it's just the same old, you've been there for 10, 20, 30 years, it's just boring. And you wonder every day why you're with this person. Maybe meet interesting other people, and you think, gee, if only I was with her or with him. How do you rekindle those relationships so they're full of passion and interest and juice again? So for all of those people, we teach these same 12 essential skills, and I can just guarantee you learn those skills, and you're going to have a whole different relationship trajectory. What happens to your relationship in the future will not at all look like a relationship in the past. If you've been in a relationship for a long time, you'll rekindle your love, rekindle excitement, rekindle passion, rekindle interest in the other person. If you're in a new relationship, you'll learn to give it a really firm foundation. If you're single, you will learn to deal with the dark side that sabotage your life relationships. You'll learn to deal with the behaviors that have kept you from true love. You'll learn to deal with all the delusions in your head. Oh, another fun story from, I think, week 3 is a woman who, this is about changing your beliefs. Her story was, her single, her story was all the good men had taken. So we talk about how our beliefs interfere with reality. So she went to go see my friend Pat Carrington, who you both know, who's a wonderful EFT practitioner working on this problem. She was convinced all the good men had taken. So Pat worked with her for a while, several sessions on this belief. And then one day this client of hers came bounding in and said, I met somebody. And Pat had encouraged her to write down what she wanted in a man. She had a list of 27 things. And she said, you know, I've only been on a couple of dates with him, but he's already got about 21 of those 27 things already. And Pat was saying, wow, that's so wonderful. And where did you meet this guy? She said, oh, at work. And Pat said, tell me more. And she said, yeah, but he works 3 cubicles down from me. And so Pat said, and how long does he work there? And she said, oh, about 6 months. And so the point of the story, the moral of the story is, she believes all the good men are taken, and she doesn't, her belief prevents her from seeing the guy 3 cubicles away for 6 months, or all the other guys who may have been perfect. They wind up getting married and having a great, successful marriage, until she, see, the thing is, it's not that circumstances out there to change for you to be happy. It's that you have to get happy and change your neural network, your wiring. You have to learn these techniques. And when you learn them, you're seeing the world through a different lens, through different neural wiring patterns. You then see the guy 3 cubicles down once you've got rid of your belief that all the men are taken. You don't have to have the perfect man show up, because the perfect man had been sitting there right in front of her for 6 months. She hadn't seen it because of her belief system. We have all kinds of beliefs about the way the world is, about the way men are, the way women are, the way our bodies are, the way love is, and those beliefs are a tremendous obstacle to loving, happy relationships. So we have to tap on those, release those, and see the world the way it is. And the world turns out to be, as you and I know, the world turns out to be full of love, full of loving people, full of loving, kind people. Our lives, as we know, are full of absolutely magnificent people. We have these lives brimming with love every day. It's like, as I sit there in meditation in the morning, I sit there and tune into love and the universe, and I think, God, there's so much love here. Where do I put it all? So that's the life we want you to have. We've written these books. I designed this online course. I want you in that course to share with me, learn those skills. And it's really vital that you learn these things so that you have the skills to navigate the challenges of relationships. So we, as you can tell, we're practicing this in our lives. We're passionate about these things. We want you to have them too. It really hurts us. It hurts me personally when I see a couple getting divorced who could have made it if they just had a few simple skills. Or a single person going from bad relationship to bad relationship. There's an old British children's nursery rhyme poem, and it says, for the lack of a horseshoe nail, the horseshoe was lost. For the lack of a horseshoe, the horse was lost. For the lack of the horse, the rider was lost. For the lack of the rider, the knight was lost. For the lack of the knight, the skirmish was lost. For the lack of the skirmish, the battle was lost.